John Bolton's announcement that he would honor a Senate subpoena. Under today's resolution, the managers also have broad authority to submit to the Senate any additional evidence the House may acquire on its own, and we will do so. The Senate is on trial. We will see whether they conduct a fair trial and allow the witnesses or conduct a cover-up. Today's resolution is the next step in this serious and solemn constitutional process. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on the resolution.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This impeachment process has been flawed from the outset. It resembles not a congressional action, it resembles more a Dr. Seuss book, knowing not which way it goes. On September 24th, the Speaker declared at a press conference the House was conducting an impeachment inquiry. However, to the contrary, to the Speaker's decree that we were all of a sudden in impeachment inquiry, the House did not authorize the impeachment inquiry until October 31st by adopting H.R. 660. It is just said just a moment ago that the Speaker has been leading the fight for a fair trial in the Senate. I wish the Speaker had been leading for a fair hearing in the House instead of trashing our rules. For those 71 out of 78 days from the time it was announced at a press conference to the time we finished, the President was not permitted to participate in these meetings. Think about that, 71 days out of 78 in which we actually did something on impeachment. He was not presented the ability to cross-examine fact witnesses, present counter-arguments, no due process at all in those 71 days. When presented with the opportunity when it came to the Judiciary Committee, instead of the Judiciary Committee stepping up and actually acting like the Judiciary Committee of the Committee of Impeachment, we punted. We had some law professors who already had their basic talking points. He could have cross-examined them. That would have done a lot of good. Then we could have had witnesses of staffers who testified. Again, a lot of good. Where were the fact witnesses? Instead of the rubber stamp that we were warned about 20 years ago by the current chairman, we became the rubber stamp. Democrats repeatedly violated House rules and blatantly abused the rules. They even wrote in H. 660, even to this day, we will pass this out in violation of H. 660. They used inflammatory rhetoric, haunting them because this is what they had to do. One Democrat said, I call for impeachment today because it's one heck of an emergency. Another said, we have a crime in progress. We have an emergency that our national election is going on right now. But my favorite in December, it's a crime spree in progress. Oh, the hyperbole just reeks in this room. When we understand this, if it was such an emergency, if there was in lieu to finding a 911 call, then why did we hold this for almost a month? Well, we've been told that it's to help a Senate fair trial. Be damned, the House inappropriate process we had. But even though the process was bad, I'm going to go back and make sure the facts are, let's make sure the facts are here, because they still haven't changed. A phone call that was put out in a transcript in which no pressure was applied. There was no conditionality on anything given in that call or sense to do that. There was also nothing given by the Ukrainians to actually get this money that was released, by the way, before it was actually statutory deadline of September 31st. They did nothing. They got the money anyway. But the problem is they want the Senate to do their job for them. But that's not how it works. You see, the Speaker, and what I've heard today, even from folks giving 1 minute, Madam Speaker, is that this is all they wanted. It was a political impeachment. They have said he is impeached for life. This shows the true motivation, I believe, of the other side. It is their dislike for this president and the good work he is doing. So, Madam Speaker, before I reserve here for a moment, this has always been a political impeachment. Even today on the floor, the talk of the president being forever impeached and it's always being sustained forgets the Senate trial. I hope this ends, this political impeachment, and this body never sees it again. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished chairman of the Intelligence Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the resolution. The task before us is a grave one, but one demanded by our oath. The impeachment inquiry undertaken by the House of Representatives found that President Donald J. Trump abused his power and sought to cover it up with an unprecedented campaign of obstruction. He withheld hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars in vital military aid to Ukraine, a close ally at war with Russia, and withheld a coveted White House meeting critical to the Ukrainian leader's international legitimacy until Ukraine would commit to help President Trump cheat in the next election. President Trump put his own personal interests above the national interests, above our national security, and if not stopped, he will do it again. For that reason, he was impeached, and for that reason, the House managers will take the case to the Senate and to the American people, because the appropriate remedy, indeed the only remedy, is the conviction and removal from office of President Donald Trump. I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Back when this national nightmare began, Speaker Pelosi laid bare her intentions and purely partisan agenda. She told her caucus that they needed to strike while the iron is hot. This was always an exercise in raw partisan politics. Contrary to the warnings of our founders, and over the last month, we saw the justification for running the fastest, thinnest, and weakest impeachment in American history crumble. Instead of sending the articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial, Speaker Pelosi held them hostage in a failed play to gain leverage that she did not and would never have. In terms of concessions, she got nothing. No control, no moral victories. In other words, another failed strategy. After a month of counterproductive and harmful delays, I have 3 questions for my friends on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats. What happened to impeachment being urgent? What happened to Congress being on the clock? What happened to saying the House would be derelict in our duty if we did not act immediately? These were all the assertions Democrats made over the past several months. I guess it turns out none of them are true. These delay tactics were self-serving, hypocritical, and discrediting. But they made an important admission. Some might even call it a concession. You proved a very big point. Democrats do not even believe their case was robust enough to win in a trial. Even the Speaker's allies admit the delays undermined their case. Some has gone as far as describing it as a failed strategy. These are those who are closest to her. Senator Feinstein, the senior Democrat from our state of California and the hometown senator of the Speaker, said, "The longer it goes on, the less urgent it becomes." And Chairman Adam Smith, a confidant of the Speaker, said it was time to transmit the articles to the Senate. Before these statements were made last week, before the Senate Speaker relented, they are significant because they were public and they were honest. I'm disappointed these individuals did not have the courage to stand by their initial comments. If impeachment was truly as urgent as Democrats claimed, the majority should not have waited for the Speaker to choose a political convenient time. Anyone could have recognized this ploy would not work. The House and the Senate are different institutions, and at this point in time, controlled by different parties. As James Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, the purpose of bicameralism is to guard against the dangers of encroachment and to stop toxic resolutions from taking effect. We saw separation of powers prevail against an abuse of power, just as the Constitution intends. The idea of withholding a sloppy impeachment case to force the Senate to change its rules is constitutionally and politically unheard of. Frankly, it's just ridiculous. In Article 1, Section 5, the Constitution clearly states, each House may determine the roles of its proceedings. It doesn't say the House may determine the roles of proceedings in the Senate. If anything, the Speaker's actions have only further persuaded members of the Senate that the evidence of impeachment was neither thorough nor satisfactory. But you know what? Let's be honest. This was never about persuasion. It was never about the rule of law. It was what Alexander Hamilton warned us, that one party would get control. And just because of the animosity, would demean the process of impeachment. And by selecting these particular batch of managers, the Speaker has further proven she's not interested in winning the minds, the hearts, or even following the Constitution. Let's take a look at the first three names Speaker Pelosi announced in her anticipated announcement earlier today. Chairman Schiff, a man who has already taken on the role of judge, jury, and fact witness throughout the entire House impeachment process. Chairman Nadler, someone who campaigned for the chairmanship of the Judiciary Committee that's responsible for impeachment beginning as far back as December 2017, before you were even in the majority, on the notion that he would be the best person to lead the charge on potential impeachment against the president. You see, you get a chairmanship by your conference voting for you. You campaign for it. You put your best ideas out there of why you should be the chairman. In 2017, that was the campaign. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, a member who almost 2 years to this date voted in support of impeachment. You know, that was more than a year before the Ukraine call even took place. Those are just some of the managers. If you think about the members, there's people who were, on the day they were sworn in to this body, told those who supported him the greatest that they were going to impeach him. As I've said in the past, there is an issue with fairness. But instead of looking to the Senate, Speaker Pelosi should be looking within her own caucus. From the beginning, this investigation was marred by selective leaks to the media, a completely predetermined process. Yes, we've been through impeachment before, but it was much different. We believed in the rule of law back then, that we would face our accuser, that you could cross-examine, that the minority could actually ask for witnesses. The day that impeachment was asked to come forward, I sent a letter to the Speaker, laying out 10 items, none that were made up. You know what they were? The fair process we've always used in the past. The answer was no. Because they've been working on this for 2.5 years, they could not let fairness determine the outcome. Any other prosecutor would be disbarred for such blatant bias, especially if that prosecutor was a fact witness in the case. The reason for this impeachment is the same reason it's taken Democrats 30 days to send the articles to the Senate. Just spite. They wanted to stain the president's record without giving him a fair chance to clear his name. Last year, we saw House Democrats invert the burden of proof during their fair investigation. For every American watching, take, for instance, if this was your government, if you switched the burden of proof on you. We have a congressman, Max Rose, characterized it this way, this new freshman of the majority. The president says he's innocent, so all we're saying is prove it. God forbid government accuses you of something as an average American to say you have to prove it. We just switched a fundamental belief as an American. But only in this house do we do that. This guilty and proven innocent mentality was an admission that impeachment was not about upholding justice or protecting the rule of law. Now Democrats have invented an even more destructive standard. You're guilty because they say so. Our founders feared this day. Alexander Hamilton warned us of this day. I had hoped this day would not come. I would hope those who uphold the Constitution would believe in the rule of law instead of the spite of the dislike of an individual. Like the kangaroo courts on college campuses, or an accusation is enough for a conviction. Even as early as just last Sunday in an interview, Speaker Pelosi made that point very clear to all of us. Asked what a Senate acquittal would mean, she said it didn't matter. The president is impeached forever. Is that what this is all about? Just a personality. Just an abuse of power that you have within a house that we all feared this country would never do. You could almost see on the Speaker's smile as she spoke about this new standard how incredibly solemn she was. Madam Speaker, when Americans look back on this sad saga, they will see a rigged process that forever damaged the remedy of impeachment. Speaker Pelosi got nothing from the Senate, but the American people got worse than nothing. They got stuck with the bill for a costly, never-ending investigation. The old saying that you get what you pay for does not apply here. Congress wasted time and millions of dollars on partisan impeachment. In return, taxpayers get nothing. Democrats' misaligned priorities have cost the people solutions that could have improved the quality of their life. There's no greater contrast than what we are doing right here today than what is happening at Pennsylvania Avenue. The president sitting down with another country of a leader and signing a trade agreement. Something people said we could never get done. To make this country stronger, to make America the next century ours. But what are we doing here? We are doing what this majority has worked their entire time for. Before they were even sworn in, they campaigned for the position of chairman. For this moment, for this time, for the millions of dollars that are spent, so they could say the president is impeached. That's a lofty history. Those are lofty goals that you now have authored more subpoenas than you created laws. But thank God we got a president in the White House that does not sit back. Yes, he got the United States, Mexico, Canada trade agreement, our top two traders. He's sitting with a trade agreement with China today, but think about how much stronger his hand would have been had that agreement taken place earlier when he got it. No, it was held. Why? Because we were impeaching. That's an amazing agenda, but you promised people you would do it. This is not a moment this body should be proud of. If as Speaker Pelosi likes to say, impeachment is a national civics lesson, let's use this blunder as a teachable moment. I'll make this promise to the American public, because the day will come that the majority will switch. We will uphold the Constitution. We will listen to the words of Alexander Hamilton. And just because somebody else is in an office that we may not like, we will not change the rule of law. We'll not accuse them of breaking it and say they have to prove it. We believe America is more than a country. That America is an idea of the straightness that we, yes, would make students in Iran rise up for the freedom of what they know America to be. That the rule of law was so powerful. This is a moment in a civic lesson that we should learn. This is a moment that will teach our grandchildren that, yes, more than 200 years ago, the founders crafted an amazing country, but they warned us what abuse of power would look like. The sad part is we're witnessing it. What a contrast in a day and time. Moving forward, we must not redo these same mistakes in Congress. And my promise to you, if power was to change, the rule of law would come back. We'd have an agenda focused on people, not on politics. We'd have a voice that you're innocent until proven guilty. We would not abuse our power just for the sheer shake of politics to say you're impeached forever because I dislike you. We are better than this. It's a sad day. But the great thing about America, it will all change because the people have the voice. I yield back.
Members are once again reminded to address their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, 2 points. First, my colleagues in the minority would rather talk about anything than try to defend what President Trump actually did, because they can't. There is overwhelming evidence that the President pressured the Ukrainian government to interfere in our election on his behalf. Then he covered it up. These are high crimes and misdemeanors, and we will prove that in the Senate. Second, our minority colleagues don't like our ongoing fight for a fair trial because it got results. New documents and additional witnesses have emerged that unmistakably point to the President's guilt, and we have exposed the efforts of some in the Senate majority to put on a sham trial. The American people understand that a trial without evidence, without witnesses, is no trial at all, but a cover-up, and that will not stand. We must protect the Constitution and the integrity of our elections. That is what this is about. We must remove this President to protect our country. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia has 30 seconds remaining. Gentleman from New York has 1 minute remaining, and the gentleman from New York has the right to close. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
And I appreciate that, Madam Speaker. Is the gentleman from New York ready to close?
Gentleman's
There's no
Gentleman
other
from
speakers.
Georgia is recognized.
There's no other speakers. Our closing is no other speakers.
I have one more speaker. And
Then you're not ready
she
to
will
close. I reserve.
No, no.
No, the gentleman's incorrect. The gentleman from New York has
Okay.
one remaining speaker who will close. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 30 seconds.
I will take it back. Give me the time one more time, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman
Please,
from Georgia has 30 seconds remaining. The gentleman from New York has 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for your
You're welcome.
work. Look, the two facts that just came out right here, and again, we're going to hear in just a moment, but there are facts. Undoubtedly, the mics are not working on the other side, majority side. We've talked about the facts. There is not overwhelming evidence. We've discussed this over and over and over till we're blue in the face, but it doesn't matter because this is a political impeachment. This has nothing to do with the facts. We've shown that there was nothing done wrong, but that does not matter. When the train is on the tracks, the whistle is blowing, impeachment matters, and the only thing that matters on a timeline, the only real emergency here is that there's a 2020 election in which the Democrats can't stand to see the fact this president is going to win again. They can't stand the fact of who they've got running, so what do? We impeach him, as they said, for life. That's wrong.
Gentleman's
Vote no.
time's
I yield
expired.
back.
Gentleman from New York.
Again, no defense. I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished Speaker of the House, the gentlelady from California, Ms.
Gentlelady is
Pelosi.
recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding and for his exceptional custodianship of the Constitution of the United States. For 13 years, the top Democrat on the Constitution and Civil Liberties Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. And thank you for your leadership in protecting and defending the Constitution, the oath that we take as members of Congress. As I enter into the conversation, I do want to thank the distinguished gentleman from Georgia for his apology for his ridiculous remarks about me and House Democrats. Thank you. We accept your apology, Mr. Collins. Now I want to go to the purpose of why we're on the floor today. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we are here today to cross a very important threshold in American history. On December 18th, the House of Representatives passed articles of impeachment of Donald Trump, articles of impeachment for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. By his own admission, the president stated that, yes, he had had that conversation with the president of Ukraine, but he didn't see anything wrong with it. Well, we don't agree with that assessment. And yes, it is a fact. When someone is impeached, they are always impeached. It cannot be erased. So I stand by that comment, although I know you don't like hearing it. I stand by this American flag, picture of the American flag, as I did the day that we introduced the articles of impeachment onto the floor. Because every day, all over America, in classrooms as well as courtrooms, and in this Congress of the United States when we meet, we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And to the republic for which it stands. That is what our nation is. That is the genius, the beautiful, exquisite genius of the Constitution, of that we are a republic. That was the decision of our founders, their vision. They didn't want a monarchy. They wanted a republic. And when Benjamin Franklin came out of Independence Hall and was asked, what do we have, Mr. Franklin, a monarchy or a republic? He said, a republic, if we can keep it. I often wondered why he said that, why that would be in doubt. But we see why it is in doubt right now, when the President of the United States has said, Article 2 says, I can do whatever I want. That's a monarchy. That is not a republic that we pledge our allegiance to every single day. And so here we are today with the articles of impeachment about to be transmitted to the United States Senate. I was thinking this morning and mentioned in a previous public event the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Listen, my children, and you will hear of the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. Well, listen, my children, you will hear about an assault on the Constitution of the United States, undermining the republic for which our flag stands, by the President of the United States. The President of the United States, in using appropriated funds enacted in a bipartisan way by this Congress, funds that were meant to help the Ukraine fight the Russians. The President considered that his private ATM machine, I guess, and said he could say to the President, he could make, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Do you paint houses too? What is this? Do me a favor. So we have a situation that is very sad. Don't talk to me about my timing. For a long time, I resisted the calls from across the country for impeachment of the president for obvious violations of the Constitution that he had committed. But recognizing the divisiveness of impeachment, I held back. Frankly, I said, this president isn't worth it. But when he acted the way he did in relationship to withholding funds from Ukraine in return for a benefit to him that was personal and political, he crossed a threshold. He gave us no choice. He gave us no choice. So children, our Constitution is the vision of our founders. They were so brave. They declared independence. They did in a time frame when in the course of human events it becomes necessary. They declared independence. They fought a war of independence and bravely succeeded. They wrote documents, our founding documents, the Constitution. Thank God they made it amendable so that we could ever be expanding freedom in our country. And that, my children, is what you pledge allegiance to, the flag of the United States of America and to the republic contained in that Constitution of the United States. So we take that oath. And when we become members of Congress or other public office, we take an oath to protect and defend that Constitution of the United States. And the President of the United States takes an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, an oath that he has blatantly violated. And for this reason, he was impeached by the House of Representatives. And for this reason, we thought it would be helpful to have not only the strong case for impeachment and removal that was put forth in this House, but to know that more was to come. And we didn't make it come because we said we're going to wait until after Christmas to send this over. They would like to have had us sent it over on Christmas Eve so they could dismiss it. Perhaps they don't realize that dismissal is cover-up, but that has been one of their trains of thought. Dismissal is cover-up. I was so disappointed the other day, last Friday, I guess Thursday, when the leader of the United States Senate, rather than strengthening the institution in which he serves, became subservient and said, and signed on to a resolution that would dismiss charges. Dismiss. Dismissal is cover-up. And so in the course of the time since we passed the resolution, and not because of the time. We passed it on December 18th. On December 20th, new emails show that 91 minutes after Trump's phone call with the Ukrainian president, a top Office of Management Budget Aid asked the Department of Defense to hold off on sending military aid to Ukraine. On December 29th, revelations emerged of the OMB director and acting chief of staff Mulvaney's role in the delay of aid, the effort by lawyers in the administration to justify the delay, and the alarm, most importantly, the alarm that in the administration that delay caused within the administration. On January 2nd, newly unredacted Pentagon emails, which the House subpoenaed and the president blocked, raised serious concerns by the Trump administration officials about the legality of the president's hold on the aid to Ukraine. On January 6th, former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton said he would comply with the subpoena compelling his testimony. His lawyer stated he had new relevant information. On January 13th, reports emerged that the Russian government hacked the Ukrainian gas company Burisma as part of their ongoing effort to influence the U.S. election in support of Trump. On yesterday, House committees, Mr. Nadler, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Engel, and Congresswoman Maloney, Madam Chair Maloney, released new evidence pursuant to a House subpoena from Lev Parnas, recently photographed with the Republican leader, an associate of Rudy Giuliani, that further proves that the president was the central player in the scheme to pressure Ukraine for his own benefit in the 2020 election. The Senate leader and the president are afraid of more facts coming to light. That is why the leader signed onto that dismissal resolution. A dismissal, again, is a cover-up. The American people will fully understand the Senate's move to begin the trial without witnesses and documents as a pure political cover-up. Whatever the outcome, the American people want a fair trial, fair to the president, fair to the American people. The American people deserve the truth. The Constitution requires a trial, a fair trial. The GOP Senate behaved. The American people. Okay, let me just make this briefer. The House is now moving forward with a vote to transmit the articles and appoint managers. As Speaker, I am proud to appoint outstanding American patriots to serve on the impeachment panel. Chairman Schiff, Chairman Nadler, Chairwoman Zoe Lofgren. This is her third impeachment as a staffer to a House Judiciary Committee member in the Nixon impeachment, as a member of the Judiciary Committee on the Clinton, and now as a House manager, Madam Chair. Madam Chair of our caucus, Hakeem Jeffries, a serious, respected litigator. Val Demings, a member of the police force of Orlando, and for 27 years, and for part of that time, the first woman and African-American police chief of Orlando. She knows her way around the courtroom. Jason Crow from Colorado, an Army Ranger, served our country in the military in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now in the Congress of the United States, and he too, a respected litigator. And Sylvia Garcia of Texas, a judge in a number of capacities in Texas, and a member of the Judiciary Committee. We're very honored that you have taken the responsibility, all of you, to bring the articles of impeachment over to the United States Senate with a case for the Constitution, a case for the Constitution. So back to the children, back to the children. We don't want this president or any president to ever violate the Constitution. It is very, very important that we see that that Constitution is central to who we are as a country. Our system of government, our Constitution, so valued, so respected, hopefully so honored by everyone who takes an oath of office to support and defend it. And when you see the Russians now hacking in Ukraine it just came out yesterday or day before. It just reminds me that I think most Americans would think that voters in America should decide who our president is, not Vladimir Putin in Russia deciding who our president is. I'm very concerned that in all of this, whether it's withholding funds for the Ukrainians, the Ukrainian government to fight the Russians, whether it's undermining our commitment to NATO, whether it's, again, making decisions of what happens in Syria vis-a-vis Turkey, favoring the Russians, that all roads lead to Russia. All roads lead to Putin. Well, some in the administration may think that's okay. I don't. But we do insist and wonder why this president and some in this Congress will not come to the defense of our electoral system by allowing that to happen, denying that it's happening, placing the blame elsewhere. This is as serious as it gets for any of us. Only the vote to declare war would be something more serious than this. We take it very seriously. It's not personal, it's not political, it's not partisan, it's patriotic. So again, I thank our distinguished managers for their courage, their dedication, for being willing to spend the time to do the job, to honor the oath that we take, and honor the pledge that our children take, allegiance to the flag and to the republic for which it stands. With that, I urge a yes vote and yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 767, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Gentleman from Georgia.
I ask for a recorded vote.
Does the gentleman ask for the yeas and nays?
Yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on adoption of the resolution will be followed by a 5-minute vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, if ordered. This will be a 15-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 228, the nays are 193. The resolution is adopted, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The journal stands approved. For what purpose is the gentleman from New York
I
rise?
ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered. The Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on January 15, 2020 at 11:18 a.m. that the Senate passed Senate 2547. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Cheryl L. Johnson.
Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam, I write to respectfully tender my resignation as a member of the Committee on Financial Services. It has been an honor to serve in this capacity. Signed sincerely, Representative Peter T. King, Member of Congress.
Objection, the resignation is accepted. Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam, I write to respectfully tender my resignation as a member of the House Committee on Homeland Security. It has been an honor to serve in this capacity. Signed, Van Taylor, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. The House Chair will lay before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, Madam, I write to respectfully tender my resignation as a member of the House Committee on Education and Labor. It has been an honor to serve in this capacity. Signed, Van Taylor, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. The House will come to order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material on H.R. 1230, the Protecting Older Workers Against Discrimination Act.
Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to House Resolution 790 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of H.R. 1230. The Chair appoints the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cuellar, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
With both pages, all the way down.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 1230, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to amend the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 and other laws to clarify appropriate standards for federal employment discrimination and retaliation claims and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read for the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking member. minority member of the Committee on Education and Labor. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, and the gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox, each will control 30 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. I rise today in support of H.R. 1230, the Protecting Older Workers Against Discrimination Act, or PWADA. I want to thank my colleagues, particularly the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Sensenbrenner, for working to pass this bipartisan proposal to restore workplace protections for older workers. In 1967, Congress passed the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, or ADEA, which recognizes the federal government's role in preventing older workers from being forced out of jobs or denied work opportunities because of their age. Importantly, the ADEA was enforced using an evidentiary standard that gave older workers a fair shot at holding employers accountable for age discrimination. Under this standard, workers seeking to challenge age discrimination in employment only had to prove that age was a motivating factor or one of many motivating factors behind an employer's discriminatory action. For decades, this mixed motive standard was consistent with the evidentiary standard in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which covers claims of unlawful discrimination on the basis of race, sex, national origin, or religion. Unfortunately, in 2009, in Gross v. FBL Financial Services, the Supreme Court upended decades of precedent, significantly raising the burden of proof for older workers. In its 5-4 decision, the court held that plaintiffs must prove that age was the decisive and
Gentleman is correct. The committee will be in order. Committee will be in order.
Thank you.
Members, if you can't having a conversation, please carry it off the floor. The member can proceed. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In its 5-4 decision, the court held that plaintiffs must prove that age was the decisive and determinative motivating factor for the employer's conduct. Under this altered framework, older workers cannot prevail unless they can show that the adverse action would not have occurred but for the employer's age. This higher threshold not only makes it harder for workers who have suffered this higher standard not only makes it harder for workers who have suffered discrimination to achieve redress, it also sends a message to employers that they need not treat age discrimination as seriously as other forms of discrimination. By amending the ADEA to clarify that the mixed motive standard is the evidence standard for evaluating claims, the Protecting Older Workers Against Discrimination Act would restore workers' protections and reestablish a consistent burden of proof for claims alleging discrimination on the basis of age. The 2009 Gross decision also opened the door for the courts to apply the but-for standard to other civil rights laws, including Americans with Disabilities Act, the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the anti-retaliation provisions of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The bill before us clarifies that the mixed motive standard also applies to those 3 civil rights acts as well. Despite the bipartisan support in both chambers for this bill, I'm disappointed that the White House has already threatened a veto of this legislation. In reality, the administration has a troubling pattern of blocking legislation to help the very forgotten workers it promised to support. In addition to this legislation, the administration has placed veto threats on the Raise the Wage Act, which would gradually increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025, the workplace violence protection, the workplace violence prevention for health care and